It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. Of course, we do begin here at home, where Alhaji Aliko Dangote, Africa's richest person, and the president of the Dangote Group, owners of the new 650,000 barrels per day crude oil refinery in Lagos, yesterday argued that the decision by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, that's the NNPC, to reduce its stake in the facility from 20% to 7.2% was a huge mistake. Dangote further disclosed that although he has 2 oil blocks which are set to begin production in October, he will likely not invest heavily in Nigeria's upstream sector. Besides, the billionaire businessman noted that the NNPC has pledged to supply the refinery with 390,000 barrels per day in October, stressing that the expected settlement of transactions in Naira would reduce pressure on the local currency by as much as 40%. But on the reduction of its interest in the refinery, the NNPC had defended the decision, stressing that it planned to invest more in cleaner energy sources like compressed natural gas, CNG. Dangote stated that there was no room for further negotiation on the matter, pointing out that although it was a good deal, the NNPC bungled it. Dangote also stressed that 90% of the world did not really give the refinery the chance to survive, noting that he felt satisfied personally for the progress made so far. So that no holds barred interview granted by Aliko Dangote to Bloomberg yesterday, very revealing. He spoke very freely, answered a lot of questions that we were looking to hear. What were your thoughts on these takeaways?
I mean, very, very good interview. But Alhaji would like to also interview you here on Arise, because so that we'll be able to talk about this. But he said a lot of very important things. Number one, that back and forth as regards the controversy of how much did they sell to the NNPC. He said their price was about 15 to 20% lower than what the NNPC spokesperson did talk about. And that's something we must look at greatly. But we should also ask and press for that. How much was the price precisely? Because we are hearing many conflicting tunes. And also he talked about the fact that the price they still want to go and import for is still higher than his because he produced locally and he has local capacity. So what is really going on as regards there? Is that plus NNPC's profit that they added to it that made up that price? What constitutes the production cost? Because we need to know. Because you see, the argument people make against subsidy payment, yes, everywhere in the world. The truth is, you have to pay some level of subsidies. Look at Libya. I'm sure you'll have been seeing that they say Libya is 52 naira per litre. Libya is too also having their back and forth with subsidy payment. But guess what they did? They decided now to put in a card system where they can actually target the subsidy to the people that truly need it. But you still need to pay some because if you leave people with an economy where they have 70,000 minimum wage, barely many people can earn that money, their lives will be in penury, in tatters. So you can call me socialist or anything, I don't care. But we can't afford to leave people because they'll die. Because you will create more poverty in society. What is poverty? Passing over opportunities regularly. When you pull out the subsidies on other things that people enjoy, you remove opportunities from them. And they'll die. So Libya is employing a card system. Is that what we're probably going to do to be able to stop this theft? Then he also spoke further on many other things. The capacity, the fact that he's not going to go into upstream business. Yeah, he's got some 2 wells, but those wells are not of big capacity that will be able to service him all he needs. He also talked about the possibilities of petchem, petrochemicals, which is even another bigger part. Take, for instance, all these cameras, this table, most of the plastic substances are made for petrochemicals, even fertilizer, detergent, and all of that. And he talked about their polypropylene plant, which will also bring some added revenue. And he says when you look at all the value chain, over 6,000 value chain that you can get from, crude oil, then you can be able to maximize in such a way that it's still profitable. Then furthermore, he talked about the fact that NNPC made a big mistake. And I still feel NNPC made a big mistake. Owing to the fact that the refineries are moribund. If it's even the money that NNPC is now saying they used to fix Port Harcourt that we are hearing mechanically complete has not been completed since, to invest in the Dangote refinery, at least they will have held their stake and will have sold what they did with the money. But today, they are, according to their book, they're spending over 4 trillion on the refineries and nothing to show for it. Okay,
a number of things. Alhaji Aliko Dangote granted this interview to Bloomberg TV. We're discussing it. The other time, he spoke to CNN, and we're, talking about it. But it's not true that he has not been talking to Arise News. Abi Olawi is almost a designated, energy reporter covering, not just the energy sector, but also especially this Dangote refinery, which turned out to be a momentous development in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. And Abi has had the opportunity to talk directly to Alhaji Aliko Dangote. Now, to the substance of what he was telling Bloomberg TV, if you can unpack it. The most important there is that he was saying that the NNPC Limited reduced its stake from 20% to 7.2% after an agreement had been reached and after paying about 1 billion naira out of what should have been a 2.8 billion, investment by the NNPC Limited. Well, the thing to add here is that number one, NNPC is a competitor. So the NNPC can change its mind. Dangote Refinery, 20,650,000 barrels. Okay, the question for the public to ask is, why did NNPC Limited change its mind? Number two is to look at the political context. That agreement with NNPC Limited to buy 20% stake was reached under the Buhari administration. It was when President Tinubu came in that the agreement was revised, which is within, the prerogative of any new government to reconsider agreements that have been reached. Number three is the fact that NNPC Limited has made the point that it's going to relate in that industry on a willing buyer, willing seller basis. So they've restricted themselves to 7.2%. Well, Alhaji Aliko Dangote himself was honest enough to say there's nothing that can be done about this. This is a position that a would-be partner has taken. So they stay with their 7.2%. Number two, Alhaji Aliko Dangote talked about the upstream sector. He says he has 2 oil blocks there. And the operation in those 2 oil blocks will start by October. But he's not going to invest heavily in that upstream sector. Well, that is to be noted. Is it not the same upstream sector that some of the multinationals are leaving, are divesting, are exiting? So, but he did not give fuller details in that regard. But it's something that industry watchers should pay careful attention to because he speaks from a position of knowledge as a major player in that axis. Number three, Alhaji Aliko Dangote said, well, we're in this business for profit. Only an illiterate will imagine that a man will invest $20 billion and he will not be doing it for profit as a private investor. But he made a point that, look, the subsidy regime is unsustainable and that the Nigerian government has to deal with providing subsidy or make up its mind what it wants to do with subsidy. Now, this is not an original point. It's an old argument. But the point keeps coming up because the Nigerian government has been very, opaque about what it is doing with subsidy. President Tinubu will say, oh, subsidy is gone. Somewhere down the line, some other players in government will say, oh, we are providing some small subsidy. Then some other people will say, oh, there is no subsidy. But meanwhile, Nigerians are suffering. Alhaji Aliko Dangote in that interview provided ample evidence to show that even in Saudi Arabia, oil in Nigeria is 40% cheaper than what they have in Saudi Arabia. Okay, that's an argument that he has thrown up, which other people can pursue. But more importantly, he talked about Forex. He said that in terms of foreign exchange, look, Nigeria spends about 40% of its foreign exchange importing finished products. But if we have fuel produced locally here, even by a private group, it will help Nigeria in terms of Forex. And if it is bought in Naira, also there will be benefits for the Nigerian people because the Dangote refinery fuel, according to him, is cheaper than what is imported. Now, the subsisting matter, as I try to summarize, is the negotiation between the Dangote refinery and the Nigerian government. There are still some meetings, contractual frameworks, commercial frameworks to be worked out. we have been given a date of October 1. Nigerians are looking forward to what will be agreed by that date. And the spokespersons, can they stop this war of press releases? Nigerians are not interested in press releases. They are interested primarily in the pump price of petrol. And when we begin to see the benefits from the Dangote Refinery side, from the Nigerian government side, the people of Nigeria will begin to jubilate. That's just it.
All right. Now, with most of the interview having been unpacked, I'm going to focus on some of the things that stood out to me from the statements that emerged from there. Now, of course, when we heard about the completion of the Dangote refinery, a part of the excitement beyond a possibility of a cheaper fuel price and more availability of fuel in Nigeria was the fact that the space could be democratized, was the fact that there was an opportunity or a pilot, a door opening for other players to be able to come into this industry such that there can be a deregulated, a healthy market-friendly and competitive environment. However, there's a quote from that interview that stuck out for me. Dangote said, and I quote, "The oil industry mafia are stronger than the drug cartel." This can be unpacked in so many different ways. He left it at that. He didn't unpack it. However, what are we doing to deal with this so-called oil industry mafia? He notes all the challenges he went through. He talks about how it took almost 5 years just to secure land. And at that point, he'd already amassed almost $2.7 billion in debt. He talks about the issues now that he is producing, the price. Of course, there was a back and forth regarding the price that NNPC bought his fuel at. And he's saying that his price was 15 to 20% cheaper than what they imported at. And he's saying that NNPC most likely chose a price that was reflective of a basket of what they had imported along with what they had bought from him. Meaning we still don't know what his price is. Of course, we know what 50 to 20% cheaper than the 55 cents, I believe, would be. However, there's still a lack of transparency. It goes back to oil industry mafia. Then, of course, he highlighted the data problem. How can we not know how much fuel we consume per day in this country? It simply boggles the mind. So how much are we importing? What are we basing our imports on? What are we basing our budgets on when we're looking at subsidy? What are we basing anything on if we don't know just the fundamental data of how much fuel is being consumed per day in Nigeria? So he threw a figure. He said he said it's guesswork, in fact, is what he said. So my sense, ease of doing business. And then, of course, finally, moving forward, the agreed exchange rate. That's going to be the final matter in all of this. What is the final exchange rate? Because that is what's going to determine what the pump price of fuel will be, because that's what we really care about. We interact with fuel at the pump. So what will that fixed exchange rate be? And we're anticipating for that. And we do hope that it will be an exchange rate that will be friendly to the pockets of Nigerians.